All right, friends. Greg Kokel here. Stand to Reason is the show. I'm your host. We've got each other for an hour here. And I've got a full line of callers. The last couple of shows, I've been doing a lot of talking. So I'm going to just put you through, just jump into the queue here and let you guys talk. So let's go immediately to Princeton, Maine. And Paul is on hold here. Paul, welcome to the show. Hi.
Yeah, hey, how you doing, Greg? And
Good.
actually, it's Princeton, Massachusetts.
Oh, what did I say, Maine? Oh,
Yep,
that would be
okay.
M-E, not M-A. Okay, my bad.
Yeah,
Princeton.
Hey, we're on the other coast, Who cares about those people, right?
Well, there are Christians north of Philly, so that's good to know.
Yeah, they call us the Frozen Chosen up here.
Oh, okay. All right. Up in Massachusetts. So what's on your mind today, Paul?
Yeah, so I've been engaging, on Facebook and other, social media. Obviously, this time of year, with politics and everything, there's lots of crazy things that people post. And, sometimes I just feel like I need to kind of give an argument and sort of, say, hey, this doesn't really work. And I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I try to be respectful, find common ground,
good for you.
Reasoned arguments. You get it.
Sure.
But there's certain people that I keep seeing over and over again. And after a while, it's like, geez, should I just let it go? But on the other hand, then I'm thinking, yeah, but I know there's lots of third party people who are also like reading these things, because every once in a while they'll actually even jump into the conversation.
The fray, yeah.
Yeah. Well, now I've also been reading, studying the Sermon on the Mount, and in chapter 7 of Matthew, that whole section where it starts, don't judge.
Yeah.
Your brother's got a speck in his eye, but obviously there's a way to judge. But then at the end of that, it talks about not giving what is holy to the dogs, and not throw your pearls before swine. And I don't know, am I just doing that by kind of going back over and over again? Is it just time to quit? Or I don't know. I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of advice on this.
Well, actually, Jesus gives the advice in the next phrase. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So here's the way I apply that in my own life. And I talk about this, I think, in the Tactics book. Not everybody deserves an answer, all right? And I take that concept from this passage. You are right that a lot of times when you're discussing with people, especially in the forums you described, there are what I think Lee Strobel calls ricochet evangelism. It's like you're not just talking to them, you're talking to other people that are listening in. If I'm debating somebody in a public forum, I have no confidence that I'm going to win that individual. What I hope that will happen is this individual, who I think is very set in their ways, will be my foil or my like springboard to be able to speak to others who may be more fair-minded about it. Okay, so that's a real important part of those venues. That was a good observation on your part. But when it comes to the individual circumstances, sure, I can think of lots of times when people shared with me and I was pretty obnoxious, or I just dismissed them, or, didn't want anything to do with them. And so, but eventually the Lord got a hold of me, right? So you never know what's going to happen with an individual, and you never know how God is going to use the individual things that you say in a conversation when it doesn't at all seem like somebody's listening. But there are times when we can make a judgment and just say, okay, enough is enough. And I like the way Jesus put it here, which is kind of a guideline. It's the second half of verse 6 that informs the first half. He says, or they will trample them under their feet. Trample what? Well, the pearls. You're offering pearls, and they are acting like swine by trampling them in the mud. And then sometimes they're going to turn and tear you to pieces. And when you have a sense that this is what's happening, that people are so disrespectful of of the incredibly beautiful thing that you're offering, the pearls that you're offering, you're completely justified in just walking away. Don't even worry about it. Don't even go there. And especially if you find yourself in a position where you are going to be, in a certain sense, ideologically harmed. I don't think that Jesus is speaking. Well, this is a metaphor, obviously, that they're not going to turn and literally tear you to pieces. They're not going to murder you. But what they
Right.
can do is just, they could make a mess of things and be really harsh and nasty. And there's no reason you have to put up with that. So, there was and I don't know if this is exactly a parallel circumstance, but in like, what is it, Matthew 4 or whatever, when Jesus is preaching, or Luke 4, I get the two mixed up. And Jesus is preaching in the synagogue, and they're all going, "Hey, this is pretty incredible. This guy, I mean, he grew up with us. Wow, where did he get all this learning?" And then he says something about God's care for Gentiles, and he quotes some passages from the Old Testament, and it says, when
Right.
he
They get
heard,
all bent out of shape.
pardon me.
I said, yeah, and then they get all bent out of shape.
Yeah, when they heard these things, oh, that's when they freaked out, and then they tried to kill him. And they pushed him to the brow. But then it says that he just walked through their midst, or something to that effect. In other words, they were wild and crazy about it, and they were going to push him over the brow of the cliff, and he just turned around and walked away. And I mean, that he was able to do this with such an angry mob maybe is, an act of God or whatever, but nevertheless, he
Hmm.
didn't stay there and argue with them. He just walked away. And sometimes that's what we do. It's a judgment call. You have to decide for yourself, but we certainly have Jesus' permission to say, you know what? These pearls I'm offering, they are trampling them under their feet, and boy, they're about to tear me to pieces. Adios, exit stage left. I'm out of here. I shake off the dust from my feet. There's a biblical characterization of it. And
Yeah, yeah,
so,
exactly. I mean, that's also been on my mind, where Paul talks about that, like, I'm washing my hands of these things, the
yeah.
blood's on your own head kind of thing. So,
Sure, sure. It was Pilate that washed his hands, but I get the metaphor actually suits the thing we're talking about here. So, yeah, and online kind of things, you just don't have to do that. I don't engage in that. I don't think ever. And part of the reason is I have a bully pulpit where I can make a real difference with my ideas, my spoken ideas, whether it's a podium where I'm speaking to an audience or whether it's through this microphone. And so I don't need the internet to express myself. I'm already pretty worn out from expressing myself. I mean, Amy
yeah.
and I have discussed this together. Our favorite time of the week is Tuesdays when the shows end. Because in our case, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shows today.
Wow.
4 1/2 hour shows, más o menos, and 3 1 hour shows together. So we're done. Okay. Don't call me and ask me a question on my way home. I'm not interested. I don't want to talk about this stuff. I'm done. I'm checking out. Okay. So I have plenty of opportunity. I'm not going to go home and get online and see some goofball saying something dumb online. I would say, well, I'll have a shot at you. No way. But it's an opportunity for many other people who don't have the bully pulpit that I have to be able to have a pulpit of their own, so to speak, and to make a difference. But of course, you want to be very careful how we do that, because lots of people are pretty nasty when they're not speaking to somebody face to face. And even Christians, it's deplorable
Oh,
to see
yeah.
what
Don't get me
Christians.
started.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
So, with my advice to you then is that you just follow, your instincts in this one. Take your opportunities as you're able to, but sometimes you've said enough that you can say in any given moment or time or season or whatever, and walk away. If it's not bearing fruit, walk away. It's all right.
Yeah. 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 I think that we're definitely at that point with a couple of people. It's been, several rounds, and it's just, they sort of mock me by saying that they'll pray for me and things like this, and
Yeah,
so on and
yeah.
so forth. But
Well, you can tell them, by the way, ridicule is not an argument.
yeah,
Ridicule is not an
exactly.
argument. If I say I'm going to pray for you, I mean it. Okay. And,
Yeah.
but you don't have to say that. I mean, you can address the ridicule if you want to with a little meme like that or aphorism,
Well, yeah,
ridicule's not an
I
argument, or
try to even avoid those
just
temptations
walked
because
away. Yeah.
it's
Because they're just
yeah.
going to, I was reading in Proverbs, actually preparing for a commentary I did last show. And so my reading was last night or maybe this morning. I was at the office when I was going through writing some things down, and I came across the proverb that said that dealing with a fool, he is either going to rage at you or he is going to laugh at you.
Mm,
So they're either going to get angry and be nasty, or they're going to ridicule you and make jokes. That's a fool. That's a fool's response. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be
yeah.
fools when we're representing the King of Kings, right? So, and it's a waste of time anyway. It's an ego battle for many people at that point. I'm going to get him. I'm going to say the thing that gets him. But when they do that, they are just choosing to return evil for perceived evil. That guy's a jerk.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
be a cleverer jerk than they are. Well, that's not right.
Yeah. I mean, I truly don't do that, and I really am trying to again because a lot of times they will invoke God or Christian verses or whatever, and I try to bring them back and say, well, okay,
I'm
let's really
sure.
look at
I'm
this.
sure you are, Paul. I certainly wasn't speaking of you there, but a lot of Christians,
Yeah, no, no,
this
no, yeah,
is
I get it.
not.
Yep.
This is they don't think about this, and I wish they would. And we would do better in the public square if we were more virtuous in the way we communicated. So okay, Paul, does that help?
Yeah, very much.
Paul
Thank you so
from
much. I appreciate it, and keep up the good works. Appreciate all those hours of doing videos and shows and everything
Oh,
else that you
good.
do. Thank you for all that.
You're
Much
welcome.
appreciated.
Paul
Okay,
from
my friend.
Princeton, Massachusetts. Got it. go
Okay.
go
Bye
park
bye
your
now,
car in
Greg.
the yard. All right. See ya. Thanks.
All
Bye
right. Bye bye.
bye. Bye. That was a good call. That was fun. All right. Let's go to Santa Rosa Beach in Florida, and let me find my button here. And that's Tom. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Did you get blown away a couple of weeks ago?
No, very fortunately, I'm up in the Panhandle, so it bypassed us.
You mean even
Oh,
Helene bypassed you? I thought that's where it landed.
no, I'm up.
You're
You
further
familiar with the
around.
state? Yeah, we're on the Panhandle of Northwest Florida.
Right. Okay. Because I thought this Helene landed went right up the coast and raked the coast and then just landed right in the inside of that dog leg there. So maybe that's further east from where you were.
It was. It was. We were very fortunate.
Okay. Well, good for you. So what's on your
Yeah.
mind?
Um, Thank you very much for taking my call. Not when you're going home and stuff, but I'm just following up because you took my call a couple months ago about we were having trouble with going through pastors in the church. If you remember that call,
Okay.
and some advice and stuff. And he says, go to the one pastor that's been there for a while, that's kind of studying stuff to find out what's going on. And the follow up is that what happened was the pastor that was hired and that was let go with a very good severance package, paying him out for the rest of the year and stuff. At first, the church committee didn't want him. And also, he didn't want to come to the church. But somebody on the committee went behind everybody's back and talked him into coming, think about changing his mind and coming back.
Uh huh.
And that's big red flags. Why, if the person themselves and the committee don't think it's a good fit, why would they, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. So what was
But anyway,
what's the upshot? Go ahead.
so what ended up happening is the person who did that is no longer with the church. And when he came on, what happened was he had promised somebody, a worship leader, to come on board. Because we were looking for a worship leader because ours went to teach in his local school, and he promised him come on with a certain wage and stuff without going to our finance committee or anything first, or personnel committee. And so they were stuck, like, what are we going to do and stuff? And then he ended up replacing the youth pastor with him, having to do a role.
Huh.
So finally, and he wouldn't speak or talk or interact with the rest of the staff.
But
And so,
he's the pastor?
yes.
But he's not. Okay. This is really, it's getting stranger.
Yeah. So anyway, so what happened was, they tried working with him and stuff, find out what's going on. They were having trouble in the family and stuff, with one of the children and stuff. So they can understand. They try to give him time off, saying, "Hey, go ahead and take a month off."
But he's the new pastor. Is he the new pastor though?
Not now. This is before.
Okay. All right.
He was the new one. He was. This is about a year after he was hired.
Okay.
And so finally, they told him take a month off, get things fixed with his family and stuff. Take care of his family, then come back or something.
Okay.
Find out where you're at and stuff like that. So he didn't want to do that. And so finally, the whole staff says, "Listen, either you can go, or we're going to go. I'll go total as a team." It was that bad.
Wow.
And it was going on behind the scenes, so a lot of people didn't know about it and stuff. So anyway, he left and stuff. And when I talked about it, I said he's glad that I brought that up about what's going on that is causing this. He says that on the news search committee and stuff, they're going to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Well, yeah, that's right. Here's my advice. I'm not sure I caught this correctly, but I heard something about a severance package, like a golden parachute. You never want to give that up front. Here, we're going to hire you, and when we fire you, here's the wonderful things we can give you. I don't know. It's like setting yourself up for failure. Okay, I'll work for 2 months, and then I want my big severance. I don't know. That sounded weird to me. But go ahead.
I don't think it was set up beforehand.
Okay.
I think they decided to do it since he's got a large family.
Because they're trying to get rid of him too. Maybe that's it.
Right.
Get out of here.
That's more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the update?
That's the update and stuff. And hopefully, we waited a while before they even got a search committee going and stuff. We haven't guest passed stuff, but we still been keeping the theme and stuff and telling the pastors coming in to keep to this theme. This week we're going to do this week this and stuff. So it's continuity and stuff, not just whatever they feel like preaching and kind of ad hoc,
Okay.
So I'm glad about that.
So you didn't get hit by the hurricane, but you have kind of a hurricane in your midst there with over the last couple of years with this craziness. So, well, I got to take a break, but I thank you, Tom, for bringing me up to date on that. Okay, buddy.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, hang in there. Thanks for the call. All right, let's take a break. Greg Kokel here, Stand to Reason. Stay with us. All right, let's see who's next. We got Caleb in Ohio. Caleb, are you the guy who calls a lot?
Yeah, the past 5 weeks. This is the third time.
All right. Well, that's good. I'm glad you did. I'm just thinking. I think I recognize Caleb from Ohio. So good to have you back, Caleb.
What's on? Yeah. So I'll try to get through this quick.
Oh, there's no hurry.
I didn't realize. I was thinking it's Tuesday. Are you guys going to do one on the election? I was thinking, and I realized, oh wait, that's why you're recording so many shows. Anyway. So my question was, the first one anyway, I'll try to get through this fast. So I know that in the cosmological argument, the first premise is that, everything that has a beginning has a cause. Kind of sounds more like law of causality, actually. But anyway,
yes.
So the universe had a beginning. Mm-hmm. So if the universe had a beginning, that means the universe must have had a cause. And so I had a question about the universe having a beginning.
Sure.
So I know that most scientists, Christian or not, would agree that the universe did actually have a beginning.
Yeah, it's almost universal. Right.
Yeah, whether they say it was the Big Bang or something else. But anyway, so I know that typically an evidence for that would be the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy. Mm-hmm. And so I know stars can run out of energy, but the first law of thermodynamics says that the energy can't be created or destroyed, mm-hmm. just converted into different forms. And so how would the law of entropy be evidence for the universe having a beginning if energy can't be created or if energy can't be destroyed? So if energy can't be destroyed, then how could the universe run out of energy?
Well, entropy is not does not hold that energy is destroyed. It's dissipated in a way that can no longer be used for work. It doesn't do anything anymore. Okay, so you think about, so you make a fire to boil a pot of water. You have wood there, and you light the wood, and the wood burns, and it boils the pot of water. That energy is being transferred from the wood to the pot of water where it is boiled, and it's doing some work for you. You're intentionally doing this to accomplish a particular end, but you're using the dynamics of physics to accomplish that. But that wood is burning up, and pretty soon that fire is going to go out, and that water that was boiling is going to get cold. That energy that made all of that came out of the wood through combustion and went into the water to boil it. That didn't get destroyed. It got dissipated. It just got dissipated. So it's no longer available to boil. That energy is no longer available to burn more wood or to boil more water. Okay. It's dissipated. Now, I can't tell you, okay, it's dissipated. Well, where did it go? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I'm just trying to be more clear for you on what entropy entails. Okay. That's the loss of energy for work. Or another simple way of putting it, and it's appropriate that I used fire as an illustration, is the universe is cooling down. And when it's cooling down, once it cools down, all that energy that is manifest in heat is being lost more and more and more until the universe is at what they call universal heat death, which means nothing is moving. It's like 500 Kelvin or something like that. That's really cold. And that's the future fate of the universe from a materialistic perspective. Point being, though, there's no violation of the first or second law, because the energy is not being destroyed, it is being converted. It is being dissipated in a way that it cannot be recovered for work. That's the way I think it's proper to understand it.
So is what the argument's saying that, or when you use the law of entropy, is it just saying that if the universe had existed forever, all the energy, not that there would be no energy or the energy would have been destroyed, but it would have all been like
dissipated,
run down, dissipated, like the fire analogy that you gave?
Sure. If you come into a room and there's a hot cup of tea on the counter, you know that it hasn't been there long. If it's room temperature, you don't know how long it's been there. But if it's hot, somebody put it up there just recently. You know how in the Westerns they go and the posse's looking for the bad guys and there's a fire they come upon, somebody puts their hands by the coals. Still warm. They're not far away. It's the same idea. But if it's dead cold, all the energy is gone, then you don't know how long they've been gone. The point here is, if the universe were eternal, there would be no energy available. We'd be at ultimate heat death right now. But the universe is still hot, so it can't be that old. I mean, it can't be like eternally old. It's got an age. It's still warm and it's cooling down. That's the way that works.
Yeah. So can I go into that second question really quick?
Sure.
So this is something completely different than the first question, but anyway, so I've been kind of and also I'm going to be speaking at my church, my youth group, about apologetics, so I want to make sure that I would be able to answer this question if I were to get it or whatever. But so I know eyewitness testimony is typically an evidence used to show the validity of the New Testament or the Gospels. But how should we respond to somebody who says well, anybody can write a story with details and that sound like eyewitness testimony? I know one that says I think one of the details Peter caught up to John or something like that. And it's well, that would be eyewitness testimony is what it would sound like. But how we respond to people say, well, anybody could just write that down and just write a really detailed story.
Well, the answer to that is yes, anybody can write a story with details in it. The question is, in this particular case, does that appear to be what took place? Or do these appear to be historical accounts that can be verified by the standard canons, so to speak, of historiography? And the fact is, even skeptical or agnostic, atheistic historians, people like Bart Ehrman, acknowledge that the New Testament documents are good history. They tell you true things about true people who lived 2,000 years ago. In fact, I have a video clip, and I actually cite this in the book Street Smarts. If you have that book, you can go to that chapter talking about Jesus. But here, Bart Ehrman is challenged during a Q&A. And remember, he's a guy who is a critic of the Bible in a number of different ways, of the New Testament. And he's an academic. He's a good one, too. His ideas are not good. He's been challenged, I think, effectively by other academics, but he's not a nothing. He's been trained by the best in terms of textual criticism. That was Bruce Metzger. But when somebody in the audience said, "I don't see any historical evidence for the person of Jesus of Nazareth," he jumps on the guy. He said, "Well, I do. I wrote a whole book about it." And in fact, there is not a credentialed person in the study of ancient Near Eastern history or biblical times in the entire world who says that. They all acknowledge that the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are reasonably reliable historical accounts of the person of Jesus of Nazareth. Now, he's going to say you have to winnow the truth from the fiction there. And they do that in many times. It's a philosophical bias. Well, obviously the miracles didn't happen, but that doesn't mean none of it happened. So I guess one thing that I would say to a person who said that is I'd say, just as a matter of observation, there is no academic person, and following Bart Ehrman's comment, in the world who thinks that these were just written stories, not people who are credentialed in that discipline. And he was very strong the way he put it. In the whole world. Now, there may be some exceptions, but generally speaking, the academic assessment or point of view is that the reliability of the documents, and he gives the reasons why. He said, we have multiple sources. In other words, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are three separate authors that wrote separate pieces that corroborate each other. Okay, that's important. It's not just one story. It's three separate stories from multiple authors, and there's additional attestation that's provided. There are 17 or 18 non-biblical, non-canonical sources that mention Jesus of Nazareth and the Christians. And in those modest references, they actually support the information. They go hand in glove with the information that we see in more detail in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So, there's just no reason to think that's actually what took place. And a lot depends on the way the person will offer this challenge. Well, somebody could just write it. Well, yeah. What would that look like? And who would that somebody be? And when would they be writing it? Let's get into some details. If you had to write an account that looked factual, about 15th century England, growing up as a boy in Sussex in the 15th century. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to have to know a whole lot of stuff about a whole lot of stuff in the 15th century Sussex in order to write a story that's true to that period of time. That takes a lot of study. Now, maybe a person is saying, well, nobody wrote it like hundreds of years later, although this is what many people claim. Well, how do you get all the details right then when you're writing 100 years later from a different location? There are certain customs during that time. There are certain foods that they ate. There are certain names that they used for their children. There are a whole bunch of customs that people practice, which, by the way, were different in Galilee than they were in Jerusalem. So if you have a funeral procession in Galilee, that looked different than a funeral procession in Jerusalem. Now, if you're living in Jerusalem, you want to make a story about Galilee, it's likely if you were writing about a funeral, you'd describe the kind of funerals you saw in Jerusalem, not realizing they didn't happen that way in Galilee. So there's a lot of detail that needs to be managed if you're going to write a fictional story that is persuasive as an historical account. And by the way, there wasn't that genre anyway. It isn't like people were writing books all the time about history, making up stories. That just didn't that kind of writing wasn't very popular. Not that there weren't people writing about other people, biographies, etc. There were, but it wasn't like, oh, anybody can just write a story, you know. Um, so the question might be, maybe it's possible. Why would you think that's what happened here in this particular case in the life of Jesus? And now you got to get to specifics. The challenger has to get specific. Well, it's possible. Sure, lots of things are possible. Could be aliens that wrote it. I guess that's possible. If aliens are possible, then it's possible they wrote it. Doesn't mean it's plausible. Doesn't mean it's probable. What we have to do is deal with the details themselves and make our best assessment with the details of the documents we have. And academics who have done that have concluded that these are reasonably reliable accounts of the person, of the life and details of the person of Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think another thing about that though that is convincing is how you're talking about how that wasn't a popular thing back then, just like that writing a story or whatever. But it's not like
It wasn't
today where you
it didn't
have.
happen in a popular way. It isn't like anybody could just write a story, and then pass it off as history. There were historians that wrote biographies, or what could loosely be called biographies now. But it wasn't so easy just to spin a yarn and have everybody believe, oh, this is really what happened. And so let's follow this fictitious character and let's die for him. No, there's usually got to be a lot more substance. And that's what it turns out the Gospels can demonstrate, more substance.
Yeah, but also it wasn't like today where you have like Marvel who can like make up a story, make billions off of it. A lot of these people died for this. A lot of I think everybody except for like John.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know about in the case of John, but many of the disciples did suffer a martyr's death, and their lives were certainly at risk for what they said was true. Now, they could live safely by simply denying what they were claiming. But if they really thought it was true, though, if they were convinced it was true, the disciples now were in a position to know whether Jesus rose from the dead, because they said they saw him. All right. Now, how many people will die for a lie that they know is a lie? And every one of these people at least put their life on the line. We know that. James was killed by the sword. He was the first one to go. Stephen then, and others. Peter died a martyr's death. Paul died a martyr's death. So these guys, all who claimed to see the risen Christ, they were willing to put their testimony on the line. And so your observation is a really good one. And this you could tell the students. These are people we know as a matter of history. Some of them died for their convictions without recanting. And because some of them died for it, that means the others who didn't die for it were certainly vulnerable to execution, like their friends had been killed. And they didn't recant either. None of them recanted. We have no evidence of that whatsoever. Rather, we have evidence to the contrary. They went all over the place, all expanded beyond the Mediterranean region to take this message of salvation that people desperately needed it. So it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't comport with the evidence that these were stories people made up. Nothing wrong with offering that as a possibility. Well, isn't it possible they could have done that? Sure, possible. But is it plausible? Is it sound like something that likely took place? And what are What is the evidence that we're using to draw that conclusion? If we look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we have 3 different accounts of Jesus' life that dovetail with each other. 4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. That's 4. 4 different accounts of Jesus' life that dovetail with each other. So you have multiple sources. And this is something that Bart Ehrman points out in that seminar that I have the video of. But that can be, you should maybe look up Bart Ehrman, and that's Erhman on YouTube, and maybe put plus Jesus mythicism or something like that. And Amy says she'll link to it here in the show notes when the show comes out. So whenever that's going to be, we're not exactly sure when this one's going to air, but when it does, it'll be in the show notes. But you might even be able to find it tonight on your own, Caleb. So check that out. It's very, very powerful what he says. I don't. If you may not have a copy of Street Smarts, but if you do, go to the chapter on the Bible. I have 2 chapters on the Bible, and there I cite him with the bib source, where you can get the video at, and I have the whole quotation there that's relevant to this particular point. So check that out. It's a lot of fun to hear somebody like Bart Ehrman, a very vigorous critic of Christianity, affirm the truth in this matter. And that truth is on our side. Okay, Caleb?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to have to go. But I wanted to suggest to you, I think that I told you about the first time that I called about an atheist call-in show called The Atheist Experience. You should call in on there. I bet you'd be able to maybe, I don't know.
I should call it. I got my hands full with all I'm doing. So, I'm probably not going to call. I don't go online for things. And, I got my bully pulpit already. So when I'm done here, I'm done here. Like Amy and I will be done in about 20 minutes. And she's got Taco Tuesday that she's going to get. I get a pizza, with my family. I got an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of driving before I get home. But so I got my hands full with what I've got. But I think Christians should do that and get in interactive conversations as long as they mind their manners. So, okay, Caleb?
All right.
Okay, got to run to break here. Thanks so much for your call. Appreciate that. Let's go to break. And I got Micah in Topeka, Kansas, where I spoke at a university, Washburn University, once in the number of years ago. Maybe Micah was there. We'll get that call when I return on Stand to Reason. All right, final segment here on this show. Let's go to Topeka, Kansas, and this is Micah. And Micah, I spoke at Washburn University there in Topeka.
Yes,
that's in your
sir.
town, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
It is.
I had an interesting. Well, I spoke on the problem of evil, but then I had an interesting challenge from a philosophy professor that evening. So that's why it's memorable to me. But I don't imagine you were there many years ago, were you, for that?
No,
Okay.
probably not. No.
All right, Micah, what's on your mind?
Well, first of all, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
So, actually, this is it's related to Washburn.
Okay.
And it's a 2-part question. And I wanted to preface it by saying that I'm not trying to get out of engaging the culture. I want to engage the culture.
Sure.
But I feel like I lean more towards your method of gardening as opposed to harvesting.
Yes, but gardening is engagement. It's just you're doing something different and you have a different goal in gardening. So
I had somebody invite me to evangelize at Washburn, and they were just going to go around and find groups of people and talk to them about Jesus, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. It's just I wanted, knowing, having read or reading Tactics, I know that you try not to get to the gospel in the first conversation.
Well, that needs to be qualified. It isn't that I try not to get to the gospel in the first conversation. Here's the way I put it. And I just gave a talk on Friday night. I guess 4 days ago on this issue. So fresh in my mind, but I always say it the same way. I don't have it as a, here's the way I say it. I say, I do not have it as a goal to lead that person to Christ in that conversation, nor do I even have it as a goal to get to the gospel in that conversation. Now, I want them to become Christian, and you need the gospel for it. But then I take exception with an approach that says you always have to get to the gospel and challenge people to receive Christ. That is kind of, if not explicit, that's implicit in the way a lot of people approach evangelism, at least following that kind of, tract type method. I'm not against tracts either. But if the goal there is to try to get a decision, and that's not my goal, to try to get a decision. And it's not even my goal. I'm not trying to avoid it, but it's not my goal to get the gospel, because I don't know what's needed in that circumstance until I gather some intel. And then I gather intel, and I'm able to then get into using questions, hopefully make some progress towards something spiritually meaningful. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and when look at, I haven't done this for a long time because my circumstances have changed. But my first years as a Christian, I was at UCLA when I became a Christian, and I was living right off campus with a whole community of other Christians, and we would go on campus and do evangelism and start talking to people about Christ. And there are different ways that we did it. We started with the Four Spiritual Laws, which is a little tract tool that Campus Crusade used then. I think it probably still uses it. There's some value to something like that. But generally, things are a little bit more complicated now, and there's a lot more challenges. And the culture is very different now than it was 50 years ago. So it's fine to go out and evangelize on campus, but my preference now, and I think what will be the most effective and least intrusive, is to use questions, especially. I'm hearing some crackling. Are you still there?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'm going to use questions to try to move forward in a conversation. And it's interesting. Do you know who Ray Comfort is?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So he sent me a video that they just did recently, and it might have been on a list, but I do know Ray personally, and I thought it was great. And I sent this was a fabulous job, and I sent back to him. But it was one about a recent political interview. And what he did in his thing is he had a chunk about that interview, his assessment of it, but he had a whole bunch of man on the street stuff where he's talking to people, and he is using questions constantly to set up his opportunity to share the gospel. And he's very amicable, very friendly, but he's very straightforward with people. Okay. And so there's some more of that rat-a-tat-tat, but this, I think he is a master at doing that. He is a master at doing that. Now, his goal is to try to lead people to Christ in that conversation. So he is different from me in that regard, but our technique is very similar. Okay, and the use of questions, especially, you can use a questionnaire, and we've developed a questionnaire. You can find it on our website. It's called, you can just go in our website and type in questionnaire or evangelism questionnaire or something like that. Then there's a way that you can, a sheet that teaches you how to use these questions as a questionnaire with another person talking to other people on campus. And you just ask them. We're doing a survey. We're trying to find out what people think about spiritual things. Do you have a few moments to answer a few questions? If they say no, okay, fine. We just move on. If they say yes, well, now you've got a person who's willing to engage, and you let them talk based on the questions that you ask. That's how you get into a conversation, I think, without too much difficulty.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to run because I've got a lot of crackle in here, and it's kind of driving me a little bit nutty. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But Micah, thank you for the call, and I hope that helps you in your campus evangelism at Washburn University. Let's go to Nate in Pennsylvania. Nate, you got in just under the wire here. Got like 4 minutes.
Hey, thank you. Just wanted to say, thank you so much for writing Tactics. It's been really eye-opening
You're
and
welcome.
helpful.
Good.
So I recently asked a Catholic friend about his beliefs, and he explained purgatory and works-based faith. And I asked a question that kind of stopped him in his tracks. The question was, when Jesus said, "It is finished," was it not actually finished? Was he wrong? And it was such a powerful moment because he stopped. I mean, it was just, his eyes were going up and to the left. And then he basically said, "You know what? I never thought about that. I actually don't know how to respond to that."
Well,
And I
by
think
the way, is a great question. My thumbs up to that. That's fabulous.
Thank you. And so I think the power of that was basically the explicit contradiction was brought to his conscious awareness, just like that, and the appeal to authority. So this is where my question comes in. I need a powerful question like this for abortion. My dad, unfortunately, argues that the unborn is a potential life, and he emphasizes the potential part.
Yes.
And so I was curious if you had any suggestions for a question that was structured in that same way, where it just absolutely exposes the contradiction right there, where maybe it's like an appeal to authority or something like that, where it just brings it right to the conscious awareness.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that, and it's kind of simple, actually. If somebody says, well, it's the unborn baby, or just the unborn, if they don't want to commit to the word baby, is just a potential life, I would ask, is that thing you're describing, the unborn, the fetus, the whatever it is, however you want to characterize it, is it alive?
Yeah.
So what would they say? Is it alive?
I didn't, right? And it's, I actually asked something similar to that to him. I said, when I was in your wife's womb, was I dead? And he basically he started saying it was too complicated to figure out. And I was like, okay.
Right. Well, that's why. Okay. So, but that is a fair question. That's the question more broadly is, for anyone, were you ever the unborn child your mother carried? If that was you, then an abortion would have killed you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the calculus there. But in this case, I'm not. I just want to follow my lead in this a little bit. If you were, you were your dad, and I was talking to you as your dad, so I want you to answer how he would do it. And he says, like what you just said, no, the unborn baby is only a potential life. You just said that to me, and I say to you, is it alive? What would your dad say if I said, is it alive?
I guess. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes.
I think I know what he'd say. I think I know what he'd say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think he'd say, wait, I just told you it's a potential life. It's not alive. Okay, so I have a follow-up.
You're right. That's exactly what he would say.
Okay, and my follow-up is going to be this. Well, let me ask another question then. Is it growing?
Yeah. Yep.
Is it feeding?
Yep.
It's feeding and it's growing. If it's feeding and it's growing, how could it not be alive?
That's great. How can it not be alive?
Yeah.
If it's feeding and it's growing, how can it not be alive?
Yeah. But you don't make the statement. You have to ask the question.
No, never. Yeah.
Is it growing? The first one is it growing? Okay, that's my basic thing there. Is it growing? Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, things don't grow that are dead unless they're like a stalagmite or something, or a crystal or something like that. Then they quote unquote grow. They're not biologically growing. Of course it's growing. That's the problem with regards to abortion. That's the problem. So when they
really helpful.
So if they come up with this, it's a potential life. Okay, is it alive? No, I said it's potentially alive. Okay, well, let me ask it a different way. Is it growing? Yes.
Yeah.
All right, then you could add another one. Is it feeding? It has an umbilical cord attached, right? Yes.
Yep.
And is our nutrients passing? Yes. And is this growing thing, is it using the nutrients? Yes.
Yep.
Well, then it's feeding through the umbilical cord, right? If you cut
Yeah.
that off, it would starve, right? So so you agree that it's growing and it's feeding, but then you say it's not alive, right?
That's really good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good.
Okay. And one of the other questions that I came up with that I was happy with was also, what evidence do you have that the unborn isn't a human being? Because I'm trying to appeal to, he's like a very science-based
Sure.
kind of guy, and I'm trying to appeal to that, where it's like, the DNA and all those other things, like, how can you tell me that it's not a human being?
Okay, I would suggest a different approach. I'm a little short on time here,
Okay.
2.5 minutes. So I would suggest
Okay.
a different approach, a little different. And I'm just going to say this, it sounds self-serving, but I cover all of this in Street Smarts, okay? Everything that
Okay,
I've talked
good.
to you about so far. But
And
the
that's the
question
newest
is going to
book,
be,
right?
okay, so it's in mom, and it's something is inside mom that's growing. It's alive. Okay, so what is it? Is it mom or not? Okay, well, we know it's got a different DNA. And there's a bunch of reasons. The DNA doesn't match. Then it's not the same person, the individual human. It's not this. It isn't mom. It's something different than mom because the DNA doesn't match. Okay, so now I'm going to ask this question. All right, now we know there's something growing, and we both agree that it's growing. Therefore it's alive. It's a living something growing inside mom that is not mom. So what is it? And then my next question is, if I were to take a piece of the flesh, when somebody finds a piece of tissue, how do they know what kind of tissue that is? Let's say CSI, right? Crime
Yep.
scene investigator. Okay. How do they know what kind of tissue it is? What kind of being it came from?
Yeah.
How do they know that?
I would say DNA testing.
They do a DNA test. Okay. If they were to take a DNA test of the tissue of that living, growing thing inside mom that's not mom, what would they discover the kind of thing it is?
A human being.
It would be a human being. I mean, that's the DNA. And we also know this by like a no duh, and that is all creatures reproduce after their own kind. So, dogs have puppies and cats have kittens, and I say dogs have puppies and fish have guppies and people have yuppies or something like that. But the point is, so if mom is reproducing something inside of her that's not her, it's the same kind of thing she is. If a woman who's had 5 kids, then she's pregnant with another one, and then it comes, oh my gosh, another human being. 6 in a row. What are the chances? What do you mean? What are the chances? It's exactly what you expect from any pregnancy, the same kind of thing that comes out. All right. So those are the line of argument. It's all there in Street Smarts that will help you. It's great talking to you, Nate. I'm glad you called at the last minute. There's my music and there's the show. Time for Amy's Taco Tuesday. Greg Kokel here for Stand to Reason. Give them heaven. Bye-bye now.